Well, greetings once again from Cooperstown, New York, site of the National Baseball Hall of Fame and Museum. We're glad you could join us for our latest virtual program. We are broadcasting from the Bud Selig Center and from another undisclosed location in Cooperstown. Today's program is our virtual Curator Spotlight. We're going to talk to one of the Hall of Fame's curators, John Odell, about Autumn Glory. It's an exhibit that changes each year to reflect the previous year's World Series. We're going to talk about the Dodgers and the Rays and some of the artifacts that were donated by these teams to help us with this exhibit. We're very glad you could join us for today's program. We also want to acknowledge our sponsor, the Ford Motor Company. The programs like this one, Virtual Curator Spotlights, made possible through the generous support of Ford Motor Company. So we're always grateful to them. And our program today is a virtual Curator Spotlight. We look at a number of exhibits during the course of, the last year plus. And today we're going to update our Autumn Glory exhibit because it's an exhibit that does change each year. We're going to do that with our Curator of History and Research. His name is John Odell. John, how are you?
Doing well, Bruce. Doing well, and it's great to be back with you.
Do you want to tell us where you are exactly, or would you rather keep that secret?
No, I'm located in the in Shea Odell here, my one of the spare rooms at my home. We're still practicing safe distancing, social distancing, and safe spaces at the Baseball Hall of Fame. So I come in on Wednesdays generally. And we are very much looking forward to sometime very soon having the governor end the quarantine and getting everybody back to work. But that has not yet happened. So in the meantime, I do my work mostly just remotely here at home.
We won't give out a street address. You are in the same
Sorry about that. Yeah.
Zip code as us, 13326, and that's as far as I'll go, as far as hints about where you are. I am in the Bud Selig Center. I don't talk about the background to this room all that often, but this is a room that was renovated a few years back through the generosity of the Commissioner Emeritus, Bud Selig, who was a recent guest on one of our programs just a few weeks ago. This is the Bud Selig Room. He has used it occasionally during his visits to Cooperstown, especially during Hall of Fame weekend. And we do host our programs mostly from this very room. It's got lots of books in it, pictures of the past commissioners. There's a World Series championship trophy, even furniture from the office of Hall of Famer Bowie Kuhn, and a gavel that once belonged to Ford Frick, some of the items that are featured in this room. Maybe one day we'll do a virtual Curator Spotlight on all the artifacts in the Selig Room. But today our focus will be on Autumn Glory. It's an exhibit that is located up on the third floor. Part of the exhibit stays the same all year round, or basically the same, as we look at the history of the World Series, great moments, including, for example, Don Larson's perfect game, that sort of thing. But there is also a section that is updated every year, because we do have a new World Series. Last year, a lot of people were skeptical that the World Series would take place, but it did. It was very entertaining. It was a 6-game series. And even though it didn't go the full 7, it was a close series in many ways. The Dodgers emerging as world champions, defeating the Tampa Bay Rays in that fall classic. We're going to break down some of the artifacts that were acquired by the Hall of Fame when the World Series came to an end. Then made their way to Cooperstown, to our collections department, and then eventually part of a curated exhibit put together by our curatorial team, our exhibition team as well. And here you can see a collage of some of these artifacts. We not only collect items from the winning team, the Dodgers in this case, but we also think it's important to get something from the team that falls a little bit short, because they're an awfully good team too. The Rays were an excellent team last year, clearly the best team in the American League, both regular season and postseason. So they are represented in this exhibit as well. John, before we get into some of the specific artifacts, when you and the rest of the team went to prepare for this exhibit and you were looking for themes to explore. Did it begin with the coronavirus? Was that the starting point, or did you look elsewhere in terms of a jumping off point?
Every year when we're creating a World Series exhibit, one of the first questions we ask is what makes this series different? And sometimes, every year it's something different. And what makes it this one in particular unusual was certainly the entire umbrella under which the season belatedly began, the way it was run, the way the postseason was run, and so certainly COVID was the first thing that we thought of, because without COVID, it's just it's a crazy situation. One way to recognize that is that at the time that by the time of the number of games that the entire season encompassed last year, at that time, the previous year, the Washington Nationals were in last place, and they ended up winning the World Series. So you get an understanding of how quickly, how short the season was, and how important it was to get off to a fast start. And so we certainly were looking at those kinds of stories when we began.
John, let's talk a little bit about the acquisition process.
Sure.
We've tackled this in the past. We've talked about how we might acquire artifacts during the regular season. We'll get artifacts from former players from moments from years ago. We'll get artifacts from players, family members, also from fans. But for the World Series, it's a little bit different because we actually have a representative on site.
That's right.
At the series. Tell us a little bit more about that.
So for the World Series, we have usually three or so representatives, 2 or 3 representatives at the World Series. This year we only had one. It was the president, Tim Meade, who went. And as always, the job of the representative is to make the connections necessary to acquire artifacts either during or after the series is over. The tough thing about working in real time is that, especially in a situation like this, you just never know what's going to be meaningful and what is not. And so you really are having to make some snap judgments along the way based upon your knowledge of baseball and the likelihood that what you've seen is in fact momentous enough to warrant acquiring artifacts. It's a lot of times because ball players are often loath to give up, or in fact unable to give up artifacts during the course of the series, that you're saying, you're tagging them and letting them know, hey, when the time comes, I'll be coming back to you. That's fine for the winning locker room. It's a little more difficult for the losing locker room because the guys there are dejected and are often about ready to leave as soon as they can. It gets tougher. That's one of the reasons to have a couple of people who are there. But Tim did a terrific job in collecting the items. My colleagues over in collections management, as soon as the items come in, they're photographed, they're marked, they're registered. And so they get placed into our system. Our research and design people help us make sure that the artifacts are what we think they are. They come in with holograms, but we have to verify those elements. Design makes our exhibit look great, and so that's one of the other elements too. So right here are a couple of items that really kind of get us started. These are a pair of face masks, COVID-19 masks, and really nothing symbolized the season better than masks. They were part of the Major League Baseball's effort to safely play the system. Dave Roberts donned the example on the left. Third base coach Dino Abel donned the one on the right during the season. And so again, when we were looking for artifacts to say, to denote this particular World Series, this is one of the elements. Sometimes we've had years when I remember a number of years ago, a game in Philadelphia was so cold that they had these baseball caps that had the pull down flaps for the ears because it was so cold in Philadelphia. We called them the Elmer Fudd hats. So we made sure we got one of those. This is like that. This is a distinguishing element of COVID.
Normally, John, when you guys are getting ready to put an exhibit together, you have lead time. You have several months, if not several years, in some cases, when you're planning an exhibit. So there's a lot of time to think about what you're going to include. Once you've decided on an artifact, you have time to write something up for the exhibit case, the text panel.
Yeah.
In the case of this exhibit, it's a much shorter turnaround time. Who handles all the writing for the text panels that appear in the exhibit cases? Is that done by one person, or is it a situation where people kind of divvy up different artifacts, and then maybe an editor kind of comes together and then unites it all in terms of one writing style? How does that work?
So we begin. It's a combination of what you're talking about. One of my colleagues, Bill Francis, at the Hall, is one of our researchers, and he has accepted the mantle of writing up the main text that we have. There are two texts that come along. One of them talks about the year itself, and then the follow-up text talks about the World Series, the specific World Series. So there are two texts that get written up. He does that. I end up writing the text for the artifacts each year. We put all of that together, and then we have a curatorial team. All of the text goes through all of the team for editing. So there's no one person who bears all the responsibility for it. Ultimately it's my responsibility, but it goes through a lot of different eyes so that we can make sure that when the exhibit goes up, the person who's so close to it sometimes might miss being able to step back and seeing the forest. And that's one of the things that's helpful to have your colleagues being able to weigh in on word choice, on phrasing, on we have really short labels. We only have usually about 70 words that we can use in a label. And so they all have to be pretty tight. So have 50 to 70 words that we have in a label. So that's what's going on with that. So a little combination of all of it.
50 to 70 words. What are you talking? 3-4 sentences, basically?
That's it. And so it's so it means you got to get in, get the point across, and get over. But that's one of the reasons why it's so neat to be able to have a discussion like this, because we can go on for 5 or 6 or 7 sentences in this kind of context, Bruce.
That's right. All right, let's talk about some of the artifacts that came in, some of the players that donated these items. We're going to start with Dodgers ace Clayton Kershaw, a guy that prior to 2020 received a lot of criticism for subpar performances in the postseason. That was certainly not the case in 2020. And here we have a World Series ball that Kershaw threw. Well worn in terms of the World Series logo and the various labels and facsimile signatures. Give us the context, if you would, John, of this Clayton Kershaw baseball.
Yeah, so we asked for and received the very first pitch from the series. That's one of the things that we ask for. We love to be able to get that. It's we're especially interested in a ball that was used in the game. There's almost always nowadays a special World Series marking that goes on it. But from our perspective, having a game used ball as opposed to one of the ceremonial pitches is just nice. But also in this case, as is often the case, the person who throws it out is the ace of one of the clubs, and certainly Kershaw has a terrific history, terrific trajectory. Pardon me, towards the Hall of Fame. But you're right, he'd had some struggles during postseasons in the past. As a matter of fact, in the past, his ERA from the regular season was 2.43, so he's giving up a little bit more than 2 runs per game ordinarily. And but in the postseason, it had soared to over 4. But he was always usually the leading or second leader in innings pitched for the team. But in 2020, he only had to pitch 58 innings. And so fans got a chance to see sort of the real Clayton Kershaw, the one that National League batters always saw. Yeah. And so he was really quite something and pitched the way that any baseball fan wants to see every ball player play to their maximum in the World Series. Certainly Clayton Kershaw demonstrated that in game 1 with excellence, and in game 5 with sheer gritty determination.
We probably don't know how many pitches this ball lasted. I think the average pitch in a game or average ball lasts about 4 pitches before it gets thrown out or it's fouled off or somehow is taken out of the game. This one looks like it might have lasted a little bit, might have been batted around a bit, because you can see some of the World Series logo is faded, as I mentioned earlier, and also the signature of the commissioner is faded as well. So it's got a well-worn look to it.
Yeah, it does. It looks like it may have hit the dirt or something like that. That's ordinarily what might happen on that.
Interesting. All right, let's talk about one of the great players, all-around players in the game today. We talk about Kershaw as a possible Hall of Famer. Well, here's a guy that you're going to have to start putting in that category as well. Mookie Betts, of course, played for the Dodgers. His first year last year was traded essentially during spring training, a blockbuster deal with the Boston Red Sox. And from Mookie, we have a road jersey. Lots of things going on here. You've got, of course, the interlocking LA on the left sleeve, World Series logo on the right sleeve, the prominent Dodgers in script, and then the number 50 in bright red. It's a classic road uniform, and this one comes to us from a great player.
Yeah, it does. One thing, if you're looking at your monitor, it will look like there's some stripes on this, so some pinstripes. That's really odd. They aren't there. That's just a moire pattern. It's a result of moving these photographs into and out of a variety of different programs, and so it just looks funky on your screen. So my apologies for that. It's just a gray uniform. But again, this is from Mookie Betts. He excelled in the series. He had 5 runs scored, a couple of homers, 4 stolen bases. And of course, he won the World Series just a few years ago in 2018 when the Red Sox beat the Dodgers back then. The thing that is about Mookie, though, is that his numbers, especially if looking at that 269 batting average, is not particularly impressive, but he didn't space out his numbers. He grouped them for maximum effect. He was great in game 1 when he went 2 for 4 with a homer. He scored a couple of runs. He got a couple of stolen bases. He went back to back on stolen bases, stole second and then stole third, and then scored on an infield hit, which was kind of foreshadows what happened in game 6 when he doubled and then advanced to third and scored on Corey Seager's grounder to first, and then he homered. But he's got speed, he's got power, and he's just got when you watch him play, he's one of the guys. He's one of those people that you say that you want to pay money to go watch, because he has that certain joy that he brings to the diamond, a passion, a flair that he brings to the diamond, and that's what real baseball is all about from somebody who considers themselves someone who loves the game.
You mentioned, John, some of his offensive contributions. What I remember mostly about him last year, not only in the World Series, but throughout the postseason, seemed like every game he was making an over-the-wall catch, a diving catch, a shoestring catch. He played right field like he was a shortstop.
He really did. One of his great plays also was diving into the deepest right field corner, scooping up a ball and throwing out. I've forgotten who the runner was at third base. It was quite frankly positively Clementian. if I might say so. It was just a terrific throw, terrific fielding. Yes, he has. They talk about 5 tools for a baseball player, which are batting average, batting power, speed, arm throwing, and
Fielding.
And fielding. Thank you very much. And he's got them all.
Another thing that's interesting about the Dodgers, their uniform, the basic part of their uniform, relatively unchanged. Sure,
Yes.
You've got a World Series patch here. They didn't always have the interlocking LA on the sleeve. The Nike logo is something new last year for all 30 teams. But if you look at the base of the uniform, the Dodgers script, the red numeral, that is all pretty much the same. It's not changed very much.
No, that harkens back to the Brooklyn Dodgers, even of the late 40s, early 50s. I'm trying to remember what the first year was that the Brooklyn Dodgers debuted with their red number on the front. But yeah, it's 70, 75 years that the Dodgers have looked like this. It is truly one of the handful of classic looks that they might do a few fancy things with every, just for fun. But, like the Yankees, like the Cardinals, like the Detroit Tigers, they're always going to come back to this. This is their bread and butter.
John, last question on this artifact, this jersey from Mookie Betts. The World Series logo that we see on the sleeve, is that removable or is that permanently stitched on?
That's permanently stitched on.
It is.
So, yeah. So they stitch those on, they stay on.
Very good.
Fortunately.
All right. Let's talk about another contributor, more of an offensive contributor than he certainly had been during the regular season. A very versatile player as well. We're talking about number 13, Max Muncie.
Right.
And he was a big part of this World Series championship after not a very good regular season. From Muncie, we have this helmet, which, if my eyes are not deceiving me, looks like it's one of the matte helmets that has become more popular in recent years. Tell us, if you would, about Muncie and about the helmet, John.
Yeah. So, this is one of the matte finish, and also on the LA on the front is sort of is a 3-dimensional application. He was the cleanup hitter. Muncie was, and he hit terrifically well during this World Series. He hit 318 during the World Series, which was way above his regular season. He was only hitting 192 during the regular season, which is not even his weight probably. He had 60 strikeouts and only 39 hits, so he's hitting 50% more strikeouts than hits. One of his teammates, Jock Peterson, also had a terrible regular season, but both of them together provided just a huge chunk of offense for the Dodgers. So because of his offensive contributions, we sought out a helmet. When we're looking for artifacts from a World Series, we're trying to get a nice diversity of kinds of artifacts. Always want to make sure we get a jersey, but bats, balls, helmets, gloves, when we can. Those are really difficult to get because players like to hold on to them. Some players, Wade Boggs, the great third baseman for the Red Sox and for the Yankees, held on to his for virtually his entire career, and we have it in the Hall of Fame. It's really it looks like it's gone through a war, and so those are the kinds of things players don't want to give that up. So, but the rest of the equipment, shoes are pretty much fair game.
I want to ask you, John, about the matte finish helmets. I really like them. I like them better than the conventional shiny helmet. I think these helmets look better.
Yeah, I feel that I think they're neat. I don't have a strong feeling one way or the other, but I certainly think they're pretty cool. One of the things that you don't see on this particular helmet, but that you're seeing more and more are the C flaps, the protective flap that protects the player's face and jaw. With ball players, with pitchers throwing so fast and so little time to react, I think we're going to see more and more of that. I just saw Bryce Harper get hit in the face just yesterday, day before. I won't be surprised if he comes out pretty soon wearing one of those too as well. You got to protect your face if you're a ball player. Your wife wants you to do that, or your boyfriend, and you also want to make sure that you protect your career.
Yeah. Let me ask you, John, about these holes or vents in the helmets that we see nowadays. I can see a couple of them in the photograph on the right. And I don't know exactly the reason for them. I don't know if it's to make them breathe a little bit better. I don't know if there's some aerodynamic element to it. But that's something that, traditional baseball fans, 20, 30, 40 years ago, we don't remember seeing any of these vents on helmets, but now they're a common thing.
They are. And this one has fewer than some I've seen. So I think there's some different styles out there. I can't imagine, quite honestly, playing any of the day games in St. Louis or some of the other outdoor stadiums during the summertime without some ventilation there. So, and I imagine that, gee whiz, the LA sun is famous for being pretty unrelenting on a Sunday.
And even though these vents are present, it doesn't lessen any of the protection that the player has in the helmet area. Much like we saw with the baseball and with the jersey, there is a World Series logo that is on the helmet. You can see that in the picture. Back, on the right side. So there's a very distinctive marking that makes it very clear that this comes from the Fall Classic. One final point on this, I think Muncie's an interesting player. Unlike a Kershaw, who's been a superstar almost from day one, Muncie was a guy who bounced around. He was a journeyman. He was in the A's system for a while, but he's really found a home as a very good role player with the Dodgers. Yeah,
he has. And you got to feel good for somebody who gets a chance it certainly is much better to have a season in which you hit 192 and you still make it to the World Series, and then you hit what did I say that he hit 314 than the other way around. Baseball is a hard game to play, and kudos to Max Muncie for having a good series.
And he now has a permanent place in the museum courtesy of this artifact. Let's talk a little bit about the manager of the Dodgers, Dave Roberts. In a similar way to Clayton Kershaw, he had drawn some criticism for maybe not delivering the World Championship to LA as a manager, but certainly his record has been very good. 5 straight Western Division titles, I believe 3 pennants, and then finally the World Championship last year. Yeah. And he's donated a really neat artifact, this jacket. I don't know if we can call it a windbreaker. I've talked about how I can't stand the hoodies that they wear nowadays. You see a lot of players and managers wear the hoodies. This is not a hoodie. This is maybe a hybrid between a hoodie and the old-fashioned windbreaker, but this is a really sharp item. I like this piece.
Yeah, I do too. I think it's terrific. I think it looks really good. I think Roberts looked really good wearing it. He had lost to Boston and to Houston, in the past 3 years, and so he had plenty of experience in these high pressure games. He really had every game planned out as best he could. One of the examples that came out was in Game 5. When he pulled Clayton Kershaw after Kershaw had won Game 1 and now he was ahead in Game 5, and it was just after he was in the 6th inning. He hadn't even gotten through the 6th inning, and he came out and pulled him. It was unpopular, but it was part of his plan, and he knew what it was that he wanted to do. And obviously, sometimes when you make these changes, they work. and sometimes they don't. But all the buttons that Roberts pushed and all the knobs that he pulled this year worked to secure the World Series for the Dodgers.
John, do we know what the material is used in this kind of a jacket?
You know, I don't. It felt like a nylon polyester kind of material, but I couldn't tell you what the official material was.
Now, during the postseason, often you're dealing with cold weather. Of course, last year, all the games were played in Texas at the new ballpark where the Rangers play. So I can't imagine this was a very heavy jacket, probably not lined.
Yeah.
Would be my guess. Yeah.
Yes.
This is not the first artifact, though, from Dave Roberts. You reminded me in one of your emails to me earlier this week. He's part of the previous World Series exhibit with what he did as a player back in 2004. Remind us of that.
Yeah. So in the American League Championship Series, when the Boston Red Sox played the Yankees, the Red Sox were down 3-0 and were trailing going into, I don't know, I think it was the 9th inning, they were still behind. In any event, Dave Roberts, then a Boston Red Sox player, was called in to pinch run, and his job was to steal second and make his way around to home plate, and in order to tie the game, and that's exactly what he did. So it's called, as a matter of fact, called the steal, and it sparked the Red Sox into coming back, the only team in the history of baseball to come back from a 3-0 deficit and win a best-of-7 series. And so he's famous for that. He said, there's not many times when you go into a game, but sometimes it happens when everybody knows what your job is, and your job is to steal a base, and you still have to be able to do it. So we have those shoes. He's placed them on long-term loan with us, and we are thrilled to be able to show them. It's a terrific artifact.
And they are currently on exhibit?
They're currently on exhibit.
Yeah, that's great. You get to see an artifact from a player, and then years later from that player turned manager. So it's kind of a nice evolution there for Dave Roberts, who's had success both in playing and also managing the Red Sox or I should say managing the Dodgers to a world championship after being part of that Red Sox championship team. Let's talk about one more member of the Dodgers, back to the playing side of things. Here's a shot of Corey Seager, who was pretty much a nightmare to Tampa Bay pitching. Had a tremendous series, batted .400, won the most valuable player, and he donated one of the bats that he used from this series. We looked this up. This is from a company called the Trinity Bat Company that I'm not familiar with, but they are one of the licensed or approved batting companies by Major League Baseball. We take a look. It's actually a birch bat, and it's hollowed out at the top at the very end of the bat. So this came to us from Corey Seager. Tell us a little bit more about him.
So first of all, this is actually the bat that Corey Seager used to drive in Mookie Betts in the 6th inning of Game 6 that gave the Los Angeles the go-ahead run that ultimately would win the series for them. So not only did he give us a bat that he used, he gave us the series-winning bat, and that's what this is. During the series, he scored 7 runs. He batted in 5. He posted a .400 average. He was unanimously chosen to be the World Series most valuable player. But just 2 years ago, in 2018, he had Tommy John surgery, and so that year was pretty much lost to him. He came back in 2019, but he had for this series. He ended up having home runs in games 2 and 4, and he had 4 doubles and a stolen base, and he reached base 14 times for everybody. And he also won the National League Championship Series MVP as well. So he's just had a tremendous postseason, and obviously the sports writers recognize that, and that's why they gave him the unanimous series MVP honors.
John, do you have a chance to pick up this bat?
I have not had a chance to pick up that. Well, that's not true. I have, but it's been so long I couldn't tell you very much about it.
Yeah. Now, I do see where it says Birch. To the right of that is 34. I'm guessing that's the length. I don't know for sure.
I think it's a 34-32. 34 ounces, 34 inches and 32 ounces, and sometimes called a drop 2 for that. The hollowed out end, incidentally, does take a little bit of weight out of the end of the bat where you don't need it, and helps shift the center of gravity a little bit more towards your hands, and without affecting the sweet spot, where if you hit that ball, and if you've ever hit a ball just right, it's just like, it's an amazing thing. The ball just jumps right off the bat, and that's always a tremendous feeling.
I first remember seeing those hollowed out bats in the early 70s.
I think that's when they started. Yeah.
With the Reds. I think I saw him in a playoff or World Series game one year. He was one of the early guys to use these bats. He was one of the few at the time, but they've become more and more popular. And scientifically, as you say, it's been shown that it is a way to increase your bat speed by lessening some of the weight at the very end of the bat. You don't hit at the very end of the bat, or ideally you don't. And that's part of the theory there. Seager, of course, a great player. He's going to be a free agent after this year. It'll be very interesting to see if he remains a Dodger or goes elsewhere. So that's the Dodger side of the coin. We're going to talk about some of the Rays artifacts. But before we do that, here we have a couple of pins.
Right.
This did not come to us from a player. This comes to us from another source. Tell us about these, John.
Yeah. So these are called press pins, and for over 100 years, the press has received these little tokens that you could place generally on your jacket lapel, traditionally on your jacket lapel, to indicate that you're a member of the press. And it's it doesn't really serve as your credential, so to speak. The credential is the pass that gets you into some place. And in this case, these lapel pins don't get you into something, but they do identify you as part of the coverage, the press coverage for the World Series. Each team designs and distributes the press pins to the journalists who are accredited to cover the World Series. It used to be, and when we go back in time, you'll see a lot of these World Series press pins will have the year on them, what year the World Series was. Nowadays, they don't do that because you have to produce the press pin far enough in advance so that you can have them all ready. You have to design it and have it manufactured so that it's ready to go on World Series Day #1. But there are so many opportunities to stumble, both at the end of the regular season and then, goodness knows, throughout the course of the postseason, that teams no longer put the year on, so that if you didn't make it into the World Series this year, you can just use next year's World Series press pins. Hopefully you'll make it. And so that's what's going on with these guys. Now, the Dodgers and Rays will have to create new press pins for next year, but all the teams that they vanquished along the way, the Braves and the Astros, Yankees, have got their own press pins just sitting in a vault somewhere waiting to go. These came from one of our from our direct vice president of communications, John Shestakovsky, who is also accredited to cover the games.
I might be reading too much into this, John, but it's interesting the designs the teams chose. The Dodgers are a traditional franchise. They have kind of a conservative look here. It's very basic, just World Series, Dodgers in script. Of course, it's shaped like home plate, the five-sided pentagon. And then a newer franchise like the Rays, and their pin's a lot flashier. It's a little more elaborate. It's incorporating the star along with their team name Rays. They've gone with a circular pattern. Interesting contrast in the two franchises.
It is. Literally breaking out of the mold. The Rays are. It's kind of neat, and a nice contrast between these two.
Pretty nice collectible to be part of the media and to have one of these items. And as we said, our Hall of Fame executive, John Shestakofsky, donated these generously to our collection. Let's move on now to the Tampa Bay Rays, because they were quite generous in giving us some great artifacts. We're going to start with their first baseman, Ji-Man Choi, seen here, making some rather acrobatic plays.
Yes.
When you look at him, you wouldn't think he is such a deft and mobile first baseman, but he certainly showed himself to be just that during the postseason. He gave us one of his road jerseys. You can see the Rays logo, similar to what we saw on the World Series pin a moment ago, right there on the front of the jersey. And then, of course, Choi and his number 26 on the backside. Tell us about Choi.
So Ji-Man Choi is the first Korean-born position player to appear in a World Series game. And he donned this jersey in Game 2. He went 1 for 3 with 2 runs scored in the Rays' first victory of the Classic. But Choi was not always the only first baseman. He was part of a first base platoon with Mike Brousseau and Yandy Diaz. But the thing that was really interesting about Choi was that he was deceptive in his flexibility, in his mobility. Watching him, his ability to contort itself. He's a master over at first base defensively. He was not particularly strong offensively, but his glove and his ability, his baseball sense around the bag, to be able to, and that's one of the reasons why we chose the images that we did to show Choi, being such a master at the first bag. His ability, he can go into a split with no problem at all, to catch errant throws from the infielders. And the last thing is that he brings such joy. He seems to enjoy himself more than anybody else on the field. It's just really terrific to watch him play. And in a lot of ways, like Mookie Betts, he's just he makes you want to pick up your own glove when you're an old guy like me. Make you pick up your own glove and try things out. I don't think I will, but he has that kind of infectious personality. Yeah,
and he's yet another example of you don't necessarily have to have the stereotypical athletic body to play the game. When you look at him, I don't want to say that he's tremendously overweight, but he looks a little bit paunchy, I guess, might be the word to use, but that doesn't affect his play. As we said, he's very good defensively,
right?
He's a guy that has become a productive player, sort of like Max Muncie. Bounced around a little bit. He's really found a role with the Rays, and he's shown that baseball is a game of many different body types.
He's got a little bit of a Kung Fu Panda action going on there. I feel
a little bit. A little bit lighter, but similar. Right. Now, here's a guy who does look a little bit more athletic. He has maybe the ideal build that scouts are looking for, and he was phenomenal throughout the postseason. Randy Arozarena batted .364 in the World Series, hit 3 home runs. Here was a guy that a number of baseball fans had probably never heard of a month or 2 months earlier, outside of the Tampa Bay area, and was originally with the Cardinals, came over in a trade. Just a phenomenal series that Arozarena turned in, and he donated one of his bats that we see here. This one is not a birch bat like the earlier we saw. This one is made of maple. Tell us about the bat, a little bit more about Arozarena.
Yeah, so Arozarena, first I'll tell you a little bit about the bat. This is a bat that he used to hit a solo home run in Game 4. It was during the 4th inning, and that home run broke the record of most home runs in a postseason. It was a mark that was most recently matched by Barry Bonds back in 2002. He went on to hit yet another postseason home run, so he ended up with 10. He set records for most hits in a postseason, 29, and total bases. He had 64 total bases during the postseason, which is just breathtaking. He's fast. He's got power. He's from Cuba. He was a star in Cuba, and he defected in 2015. And one of the reasons that people didn't know who he was that he's still a rookie. He's played so little that he still qualifies even this year as a rookie. There's your first year in baseball, you're a rookie, but if you don't play too much, then they extend. There's a certain number of games that you have to play before you're no longer a rookie. And so Randy Arozarena still has not played enough games. He's still a rookie this year. So like G-Man Choi, he's got a great passion for the game that shines through. He had a terrific postseason, as I mentioned, in the wild card, in the ALCS, in the division series. He just hitting homers after homers after homers. So just a terrific young talent that I think is going to be and just somebody worth watching. If you're going to be picking somebody to say, hey, here's somebody worth keeping an eye out on, this is one of those guys.
Earlier with the birch bat, it was so dark in color you couldn't see any pine tar, although they may very well have been pine tar on it. This, of course, is a much lighter bat. We can see really pine tar. Looks like it's more than midway up the barrel or midway up the bat, and it's very heavy in pine tar toward the handle.
Yeah.
And inevitably, people will ask, why don't we scrape that pine tar off? Why don't we clean this up a little bit? Why not?
Right. So our part of our job as a cultural institution is to maintain things the way they were when we got them, and the way artifacts were when they were being used. And so that's a pretty typical responsibility of any museum. And so even though it makes it more difficult for us to handle for a while, eventually, fortunately, pine tar will harden. It will give up its volatile. It means it gives off gas. And as it gives off gas, it gets harder and harder. And finally, it just turns into a solid. It's no longer sticky. And so our job is to preserve and maintain this bat so that it looks as it did when it came off the field. One of the things that we do, by the way, an item will come in and a ball player will say, this is what this is. And we'll go back and check against the high def television broadcast of it and make sure. You can see that there's a little mark there right below his name and to the right. It looks like a little mark of some sort. Another one down towards the left. The pattern of pine tar on bats is virtually always unique. It's like a fingerprint. And so these give us all clues to confirm that this was the bat that was used for X, Y, or Z. And that's one of the things that we double check against when a ball player says, this is what I've got. One of the examples that I use to tell about that is a number of years ago now, David Ortiz gave our then president, Jeff Idelson, a bat that he'd used in the World Series. He said, our president had asked for a bat that he'd used. David said, here you go, here's one. We brought it back, and turned out that I started going back and looking through the film, and he never used it in the World Series. It was in the bat rack. He used it in the American League Championship Series. He used it during the postseason, but he didn't happen to use it. I think that was against the Cardinals that year. And if I recall correctly, that was a 5-game series. He just never had the need to bring that particular one out. But because of the distinctive bat wrapping pattern at the handle, I was able to determine what games it was used in and checked every at bat. And it wasn't used in the World Series, but we were able to say that it was a postseason bat. So that's how we, trust but verify.
And it's not necessarily the players doing this intentionally. They can get confused. They use a number of bats. They have, especially star players, they get an incredible supply of bats from these companies. So sometimes it's hard for them to keep track. All the bats have the same measurements for a particular player. I mean, every bat is tailored. So when they pick up a bat, it's going to feel the same, and it might even look the same. They might think they're giving you one bat, and it ends up being something else.
That's right.
Yeah.
No, we have never had in that kind of situation something deceptive going on from somebody, giving us something during the World Series and saying it's one thing, but it's not. But honest mistakes happen. But that's part of what the curatorial job is and research is to make sure that we know what it is that we do have, and then we present that accurately to the visitor.
Randy Arozarena, breakout player in last year's postseason run, and especially in that World Series with the 364 average and 3 home runs. John, one final artifact to talk about, and it's an artifact that comes to us from one of the lesser-known Rays. He came off the bench in Game 4. Brett Phillips delivered this game-tying single that also produced the game-winning run because of some miscues by the Dodgers in the field. It's one of the most bizarre endings I've ever seen to a World Series game. You probably would say the same.
Absolutely.
We see Phillips celebrating, running away from his teammates as they tried to mob him. So from this at-bat, this game-winning at-bat in Game 4, he gives us these spikes.
And what better artifact, again, to talk about making sure that you get the artifact that you're looking for that tells the story. And these spikes are the spikes that tell his story. His zooming around the outfield like an airplane is just remarkable. It was when it happened, it was just so much fun to see it. It was Bruce, I agree with you, one of the most remarkable games that I've ever seen. Just back and forth, and to have it end not with just one error, but 2 errors on the final play, and included Randy Arozarena stumbling, falling down, rolling over, running back towards third, and realizing that the ball had gotten past the catcher, and then sliding in head first, hands first, and slapping the plate. With the game-winning run. What you want every team feels like it needs to steal at least one World Series game in order to win the series. The teams are often so evenly balanced. That was certainly the game that the Rays stole from the Dodgers, and it was just remarkable, just an incredible game, and certainly one of the most exciting games that you'll ever, at any time that you'll ever see. You wouldn't believe it if if it happened during the regular season, but to have it happen on baseball's greatest platform, basically the World Series, made it all the more memorable. This was Brett's only appearance during Brett Phillips' only appearance during the World Series was this pinch hit single that he had. He'd been hitting only 150 in the regular season, and he was already 0 for 2 in the other games of the postseason when he was called upon to pinch hit, which is, what a great lesson that is for all of us. It's like, what's your job? It's like you have to forget, every failure that you've had, and in this case, he was failing 8 times out of 10 when he goes to the plate, and still. He focused on that moment and was able to deliver for his team in a moment that's going to live on for a long time. Probably live on even longer if Tampa Bay had won the World Series.
Yeah. So spikes from Brett Phillips, a backup player, but a key part of the 2020 World Series. We do have a few minutes remaining, and we'd like to take your questions during these final 5 minutes or so. You can do that right in what's called the Zoom group chat, or the chat box, as we sometimes refer to it as. We do have a question in here from Steve Sankner. Steve wants to know, it's not about the 2020 World Series, but it's going back 101 years. Are there any artifacts from the 1919 World Series between the Black Sox and the Reds?
Yeah.
Are any of those in the Autumn Glory exhibit?
Yes, there are. And actually, two things. First, Bruce, if you'll advance one more frame, I think we've got our Dodgers rings next.
Yes.
There we go. I wanted to show that to the for the Dodgers fans. That's the bling that they got for winning the World Series. These things are just huge, and I've seen them. We don't have ours from Los Angeles yet. We'll get ours later on this summer, but they are if you've got a big monitor, that's about life size. It's they're big, and so we do have, by the way, the first pitch thrown, the ball from the first. I talked earlier about our first pitch from this World Series. We got the first pitch thrown in the 1919 World Series. Now the thing is that the White Sox were at home for Game 1. And if you know your 1919 World Series history, you know that it was the first pitch from the White Sox pitcher that signaled that the fix was in when he hit the leadoff batter. We don't have that ball because the White Sox, like I say, were batting at the in the top of the first. So. And the Reds were pitching, so we don't have but we do have the first pitch from that. I think that may be all we have. That's all I can remember right off the top of my head from that World Series.
All right, so 1919 is represented there. These rings recently given out to the Dodgers players and manager and coaches, and we will be getting one of these rings. We traditionally get a ring donated to us by the commissioner's office, and that will eventually make its way to the Hall of Fame here in Cooperstown, and it'll be put in the display case with the other rings. And boy, some of those rings go back as far as the early 1930s. See, we have another question on the chat, and this actually is a question for me, and this comes in from Miss Wynn's class. Miss Wynn's class is a 4th grade class out in California at the Santa Fe School. They have joined us for the program today. So either Miss Wynn or one of her class members wants to know, what is the photo behind me? Well, directly behind me is a blow-up of a U.S. postage stamp of the great Jackie Robinson. I believe this one was issued sometime in the 1990s when stamps were still only 20 cents, and it was put out as part of Black Heritage Month. And we traditionally keep that Jackie Robinson blow-up stamp behind us during our programs. So you see it not all of our programs, but probably 95% of them, you'll see the Jackie postage stamp. And then to the right of us, I'm not sure how well you can see, I'm going to angle the camera just a little bit. We have a blow-up of Lou Gehrig's plaque from the Hall of Fame Plaque Gallery. And the reason that we have this, a few years back, there was a promotion, if you will, put on by the ALS Foundation. And John, maybe you can help me out. I forget exactly what they called it, but it's where they dumped ice water on every ice bucket challenge.
Ice bucket challenge, right? Yeah.
Thank you. So it was the ice bucket challenge. We actually ended up doing that with all of our employees in front of the museum one day that summer.
Yep.
And we had, as part of this, we had blow-up plaques made for the 2 Hall of Famers who succumbed to ALS, Lou Gehrig, and the other one being Jim Catfish Hunter. So we actually, I'd had this years ago, and then it somehow made its way out of my office across to Stephanie Hazard's office on the other side of the education department. I'd been looking for it for a while. I realized it was there, and I said to Stephanie, "Can I have this back?" And she said, "Go ahead, take it." So I brought it back, and we have it in here now. So that's what those 2 photographs or those 2 images are: Jackie Robinson's stamp and a blow-up of Henry Louis Gehrig's plaque from the gallery. I think that, well, actually, we do have one more question that's come in. We'll do that before we let John go. Actually, it's a comment from Jennifer saying, "Yep, that's me." That's right, Jennifer. We do appreciate you and your class being with us. And this is from Martin Brody, a question. He is curious about the TS in Robert's ring being less visible.
Yeah, I see that too.
Yes.
And I'm going to tell you the truth. I grabbed this off of the internet. It was Jostens image. Jostens is the jewelry manufacturer. And I'm going to bet that that's simply a shadow effect that they created for the purpose of the illustration. You'll see a similar thing down with the S on champions at the bottom of the center image. And I think it's just a little bit of a shadow effect that they've thrown in there using one of the image modifiers to just suggest depth, and that's what I'm sure that's what the story is. These are simply these are the computer generated designs that Jostens created.
And just to clarify, where it says Roberts in the image on the left, his name is spelled out. The T and the S at the very end of Roberts do look like they're a different color than the ROBER, but I think that's probably just a function of the image as opposed to what the actual ring looks like. So we think that's what's going on with that one, Martin. We appreciate the questions. We certainly appreciate John Odell's time with us, our curator of history and research, talking about the newest incarnation of Autumn Glory, postseason celebration. And you can come see that at the Hall of Fame. Yes, we are open. We have been open since June of last year. And starting in late May, Memorial Day weekend, we're actually going to be expanding our hours. Currently, we're open 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., but starting that I believe it's Memorial Day weekend, we will be open still the 7 days a week, but open 9 to 7 p.m., 7 days a week. John, we thank you for the time. We do appreciate it. And of course, we thank the Ford Motor Company for their generous support as well. John, thanks for being with us. Take care, and we'll see you down the line.
Absolutely great. And thanks to Ms. Wynn's class for joining us here today. We're thrilled to have you here. And hope you guys have a great spring and a wonderful summer. The same with everybody. Great to talk about the World Series and great to be starting into a new season. So it's looking good. Things are looking good.
Yeah. Tell everybody at the Santa Fe School that your class got to be mentioned by the Hall of Fame. So that's
in the Hall of Fame now.
Yeah, that's something worth talking about. We thank everybody for joining us today for our virtual Curator Spotlight. We're going to continue to do these programs throughout the spring and the summer. Just want to mention very quickly, one of our next programs coming up is a week from today, Thursday, May 6th, at a special time of 12 noon. We're going to talk to baseball writer John Shea. He did a recent book with Hall of Famer Willie Mays, and we're going to talk about the great Willie Mays, the Say Hey Kid, with John Shea. Again, that's coming up Thursday, May 6th, 12 noon Eastern Time. Thanks for being with us today. Have a great day, everybody.